Welcome to Calm Your Crazy. I'm Kiana Lambert, and tonight we are talking about frequency, vibration, and sound, and your body. I wanted to talk about this because this is how you shift your reality. We create reality with our bodies, and realities are separated by vibration, frequency, and dimensions. So each emotion that we have corresponds to a frequency. The lower ones are anger, pride, jealousy, and all those feelings. And then the higher ones are love, expansion, joy, safety, peace. And when you are feeling these emotions, they create thoughts. And thoughts create chemistry in the body. And then you have feelings. And these feelings expand your electromagnetic field if they are positive. So you go into the expansive state. And when they are negative, your torus field, which is your electromagnetic field, shrinks. And you go into the lower vibratory states. And you are constantly having energy coming in through your body. Your torus field is like a donut of energy, and you are in the center. And it's constantly coming in from your consciousness, which is attached to everything and everywhere because it is you. And if we don't feel with our bodies, then our emotions get stuck. And that's why we get stuck into the lower vibratory feelings and why people can't shift their reality, because they are stuck in this state with this feedback loop of thoughts and emotions and feelings, and it guides their perception in a negative way, and then that's the reality that they experience. That's the one that they create, because that is how they feel. So I'm going to start off with who we used to be and what we used to be able to do as a civilization. This technology has been lost, and it's unfortunate because it was very cool technology. We used to be able to melt stone with sound. We used to be able to carve out stone with sound. And we used to be able to travel between stones with sound. We used to be able to feel the stars. Our bodies weren't separate from the earth, from the universe, from anything. They were instruments that we tuned, that we were working with, that were highly sensitive and responsive to our will. We knew how to create specific feelings inside our bodies that vibrated at a specific rate, called frequencies. We understood that frequency interacted with matter, space, and consciousness itself. We could heal with sound, we could travel with sound, and we still could do all of this. And the reason that we can't is because we stopped feeling our bodies. Why did we stop feeling our bodies? Well, we became overstimulated. TV, phones, society, the constant noise outside, and society's way of being capitalistic and the constant drive to do things you don't want to do. So when you do things you don't want to do, you stop listening to yourself because you push past what your body is telling you. You don't feel it. And we did this by moving out of our bodies and into our minds. And society also operates this way to keep your nervous system in chronic dysregulation with fear, stress, pressure, trauma. That's all survival. We are not living right now in an expansive state. Most people are living in survival because of capitalism. And the reason that I'm teaching this and the reason that I do all of this is because it doesn't matter where you are and what state you're experiencing. If you can regulate your nervous system, if you can understand the knowledge of who you are, then you can change your perception, you can change your reality, and that will mirror itself to you. And if enough people do this, we can change the world. There are a lot of us that were planted here, star seeds or whatever you want to call them, And we came down here to do this specific thing. And if you're on this frequency and you can understand what I'm saying, then that is part of your mission too, or your experience that you signed up for. So it is definitely something that I'm passionate about for people, just not even just to change the world, but so that they can have lives that don't get triggered and respond to their environment and have all this drama and trauma that just continues generation after generation after generation. If we can get back to who we are and our bodies and work with the technology we have now and the life we have now and be able to regulate ourselves, then that is what's going to make a huge difference for people in their individual lives. So back to how we lost these abilities. When the nervous system, which is composed of your brain, spinal cord, and your vagus nerve, when it's dysregulated, meaning that you are constantly feeling stress and anxiety, it goes into a dysregulated state, which means that you're constantly aroused. You're constantly in an anxiety state. Your blood pressure's high. You're not metabolizing nutrition the way that you're supposed to. You're constantly trying to calm yourself down or look for what the problem is in the environment. You're addicted to stress hormones that are cortisol and adrenaline, and if you don't get those, you feel like something's wrong when you're at peace, and then you start looking for drama. And that's how generational trauma and trauma continues to perpetuate itself. So when we're constantly in this state, the sensation shuts down. And the sensation shuts down in our bodies, and we lose the ability to move through feelings because they're just too much. They just keep happening, and there's no way out because they're caught in this loop of your thoughts and your hormones and your body. So we move into our heads and out of our bodies. And I don't blame any of us. I don't blame myself for doing that. I don't blame anyone, because when I sit in my body, if it's dysregulated, it is physically painful. I can feel the tightness in my chest. I can feel the nerve endings burning on it throughout my body, and it is horrible. So not being able to regulate yourself and knowing what's happening has got to feel equally as bad for people. And no wonder they go into their brains. It's survival. You can't stay in your body and constantly feel that all the time. So instead of being able to process emotions, they get stored in our body. Whenever we don't feel them and stay in our heads, they get stored in our tissues. And whenever they get stored in our tissues, it gets stuck, and we continue to have the dysregulation, creating reality over and over and over again from those stuck emotions. So it inhibits our ability to go into an expansive, higher frequency feelings and emotions because we are caught and stuck in the lower frequency states, and it's a feedback loop. Your reality is constantly mirroring your inner state. So you have things that you don't want to experience, and then they cause more stress hormones, and it just keeps going and going and going. And when you have this, over time, like you stop feeling like you're in control of your life, of your body, of your emotions, because you are caught in this loop. And then society has us outsource our authority to doctors, to deities, to schools, teachers, and we lose that autonomy and self-agency, knowing that there's a way out, knowing that there's a way to regulate, knowing that there's a way to shift your reality. And so our self-authority and agency being gone keeps us from moving out of those states. And we stop believing that we have control over our own reality. But the good news is, and you can see this throughout history, and if you watch Nature Discovery or any nature shows, that the universe, the earth, life, everything requires balance. It's a homeostasis system. When one thing gets out of balance, nature's going to do what it does to put it back in balance. So Right now, all this stress and trauma and drama that everyone's going through is causing stronger nervous systems through epigenetics, meaning that the parents who experience a very stressful environment will automatically have resilient children that will be born and will be able to move through that stress easier because they're stronger. Another thing that happens with the pressure is that children begin to be more sensitive. People begin to be more sensitive. And this is because your brain changes. When you're constantly dysregulated and in fear, your amygdala, which is in the back of your head, gets really big. And your amygdala is your fear center. It's also your feeling center. So when it's really big, you are extra sensitive to your environment. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger because your brain can't see what's actually giving you any danger. When you're dysregulated and you're having a stress response and you live that way and it's dysregulation, your brain can't figure out what's physically in giving you this response and why you're in danger. So it makes your amygdala grow so that you can be more sensitive, so it can perceive what you're actually being hurt from when there's nothing there. So when your amygdala is that big and you are that sensitive and your brain chemistry is different, you start to perceive reality differently than other people. One thing that I noticed with myself and with other people over the years and just doing a lot of research is that trauma is directly correlated to spiritual awakening. And stress is directly correlated to a spiritual awakening. So the way that nature is balancing itself is all the stress, all the trauma, all the dysregulation. Children are being born more sensitive. Children are being born more sensitive and more sensitive and more sensitive. And they're more sensitive not just to the environment here, but to the spiritual world, or what people call the spiritual world, or to their consciousness. And they start gravitating towards that. And right now things are so bad that people are having spiritual awakenings right and left because it dissociates you from yourself. And then you start to see reality. You start to see yourself in a different way. You start to see the patterns and how everything's connected whenever you have such a stress response. And that is how nature's going to balance itself. Everyone's going to move and shift towards spirituality and peace and the higher frequencies because they dissociate from who they are and they can see. And it's not a dissociation in a bad way. It's meta-awareness. They become the awareness of their awareness. So you start to be able to see what you're thinking or hear what you're thinking, not audibly, but you're registering it. And you start to see your patterns because you're watching yourself. And that's the dissociation I'm talking about. So this is going to happen more and more and more. And that's why this is such an exciting time. And why all these spiritual people are saying that this is such an exciting time, because this is like the pressure pot. This is the boiling point where the pressure is coming in and people are changing. And that's why there's so many things coming up with spirituality. It used to be a $1 trillion business like 10 years ago. I bet it's gone up since then. But anyway, back to nature. Nature moves in spirals. So the sound of the ocean comes from the Schumann resonance and the frequency, and everything that happens in the ocean creates sound. And sound travels really far in water because sound is just another form of energy. And electricity travels really fast in water, and so does sound. And you can see sound being made physical, not just on a cymatic frequency plate, which a cymatic frequency plate is, a sand plate where you put sand on it or salt, and then you put it on top of a stereo or a speaker that plays different frequencies, and you can see the pattern that those frequencies make in the sand and the salt. It does the same thing in the ocean. That's why when you break open a conch shell, you can see the spiral. So everything moves in a spiral and it moves up. If you look at music, they're octaves. They just go up, up, up. It's a spiral. If you look at frequency, there's lower frequency and then higher frequency. It just goes from one to the other. So what I'm relating it to with your electromagnetism and the field that surrounds your body is the frequency range of the lower vibratory states of those feelings all the way up to love, peace, and authenticity. And that is a expansion and contraction. That's what causes the spiral. So energy is never static. It never goes away. It just transforms. Like lightning is just energy. It transforms into other energies, like the energy that goes to your phone. It goes into sound. It's just energy that is being perceived in different ways. So the more trauma and fear and dysregulation that exists in our collective experience, the more sensitive our bodies are going to become in response. And that sensitivity gets passed down epigenetically. So that means if you wake up and you have your spiritual awakening and you start to perceive reality for what it really is, that gets encoded into your child's DNA. And it gets encoded into the past and into the future, because everything is energy. When it encodes into your child's DNA, that is energy becoming matter and being formed into a child that has these abilities with them, he or she. So the children are now being born more sensitive than ever, and the children in the future will be born more sensitive than ever. And because of that, more and more people are waking up and teachers are coming out, because nature is going to give you what you need, just like reality is going to give you what you need every single time. So I'm one of those teachers that had to go through the fire, that is experiencing it so that I can teach it. You can't really teach something unless you've been through it and you know how to explain it and you know your way out. And I'm on a certain frequency. There's teachers all over the place and they're on their own frequency. And the reason that they're on their own frequency and I'm on my frequency is that people cannot hear or perceive beyond their frequency. They cannot hear above it. So it is required that there are so many of us that have different experiences that map our frequency, that make us who we are, so that we can spread the message and we can help other people who are in those specific frequencies. And they're going to be the ones that more closely associate with the type of experience that you've had. So if you are listening to this and you are healing, then find your frequency, people, and start healing together. Start doing what you can and what you feel led to do, so that we can change the face of this whole experience and this reality. So back to the melting of stone and all that, because I actually love this part. It's more like magic. You see it coming to life in a real way. But when I say we used to melt stone with sound, it's not a metaphorical reference, right? There are ancient sites all over the world where stones fit together so precisely that even today you can't slide a razor between them, not even a piece of paper. No mortar, no gaps, no straight cups, and that makes sense if you are melting stone or moving stone or creating stone with reality. And when I say melting, it's not really melting. It's not heat. It's just a configuration, a moving of particles to fit together. It looks like melting. When you look at the rock, it looks like they've been melted together, but it's actually not melting. You're just vibrating with the rock with sound and moving its composition so that it fits together. So I'm going to butcher this name, but there is like ancient sites. One is Sakase Huaman. That is an old ancient site. It's spelled Sacsayhuaman. The stones there are irregular, polygonal, curved, and they lock together and fit together like they were softened or melted and pressed into place. And they weigh tens to hundreds of pounds. And they interlock organically. They withstand earthquakes. And if they were carved by brute force, we would expect straight lines, tool marks, filler material, and a bunch of fractures. But we don't, because they weren't made that way. Instead, it looks like Play-Doh that was temporarily pliable and then hardened after we put it into place. There's another ancient site called Puma Punku, which I didn't butcher that as much as the other one. But these blocks resemble machine-cut components that predate modern machinery by like thousands of years. I used to be so fascinated by this stuff before. Now it's just like old bread, right? I'm like, okay, now I know what it is. But they exist across Peru, Bolivia, Egypt, and other ancient sites. And this pattern you can see repeating in all these areas. Extreme precision, nonlinear geometry, and stone that behaves unlike rock that we have nowadays. And the way that they did it was just sound and vibration. And you can see how everybody is working on the outside to try to make themselves feel better, you know, by buying stuff to give themselves dopamine, by working hard to try to create something so that they can feel validated, or doing all this stuff on the outside. Well, we do that when we build stuff too. We break rock with machinery. We try to use all this external force, and it creates such a mess on the planet. You have all these problems with water that needs to be used to create this stuff, and the energy that it takes, instead of realizing that it all happens within. And once you change your inner state, and once you can feel your body and you understand how things work, your whole reality changes. So the reality outside is reflecting our internal state. We're all trying to work really hard doing stuff on the outside to make our insides feel better, and it doesn't work. We're using too much energy to do it. So back to this, sound is not just something we hear, it's mechanical vibration. At specific frequencies, vibration can reduce friction, alter molecular bonding, and that one's a fun one, and change how materials behave. We already know that resonance can shatter glass, right? We've already seen that. You can see how if the pitch is high enough, glass will shatter. You can see how particles will levitate with sound, and matter will reorganize itself into geometric patterns through cymatics. One thing that's really interesting that I didn't have on my notes here to talk about, but you can watch Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Hancock, who is a man that is an archaeologist, and mainstream science and mainstream archaeology doesn't like him because he starts to poke holes in stories that have been around for decades. And he does it very well, and the other people that don't like him are just stuck in their fuddy-duddy ways. But in his documentary, he flies over the part of the Amazon rainforest that has been deforested, and it's the younger part of the Amazon rainforest. So the Amazon rainforest is not the same age. There's part of it that is 50 million years old, and a part of it that's 10 million years old. And there are tons of LiDAR scans, which are scans that go beneath the earth that show, oh man, amazing things. It looks like a motherboard to a circuit of a computer, but they're dwellings, and they're laid out in a way so that they can make the most of the energy that comes through the earth. Anyway, he's flying over, and I can't be the only one who has seen this and drawn this conclusion, but you can see cymatic frequency patterns in the earth, and they're geoglyphs, meaning that you can only see them from above, and they're humongous. When they're standing inside of them, they just look like they're carved into the earth, and you can't really tell what they are. It's kind of like whenever you're in the shit, you don't know you're in the shit. Whenever you're having a hard time, everyone else can see what's happening to you, but you can't. Well, geoglyphs are the same way. When you're standing in it, you don't know you're in a geoglyph. But from above, there's cymatic frequency patterns. The one that I remember the most, and the first one that I saw, was a circle within a square. And that is a cymatic frequency pattern of the earth at 7.83 hertz, I believe. It's that. But the circle is one frequency, the square is another frequency, and when you lay them on top of each other, they make a harmonic sound together, and you see the circle within the square. And that is how I believe they terraformed. And it had to come from above because it's grooved in. If it came from the center of the earth, you would see mounds, but you don't. You see it grooved in. So it had to come from above, and that's a whole nother subject. But it's very, very interesting because I feel like that is the way that everything was made here. And it's just frequency and sound. And the fun part is, and the whole point to this episode, is that you can do that with your body. The same thing that you can do with the earth is the same thing that sound can do to your body. And that's how you heal. That's how you change your reality. So, when you look at some of these ancient things for healing, the healing temples had bells and they resonated with your consciousness. So they were used for healing. Sound was used for healing. Ancient temples, churches, and ceremonial spaces were functional healing centers. And you can tell this by their circumference, by their diameter, and what frequency range that these correspond to. Like 528 hertz is the love. 963 is like the God consciousness, where it wakes you up. That's why all the old architecture used to be in a circular or spiraling patterns. And now it's all sharp at edges and corners because we've gotten away from it. So they designed their circumference or internal dimensions to specific frequencies so that when you went in there and you used your voice or they played music, it would reflect back to you. And it wasn't decoration, it was medicine. And this is why bells were central to ancient temples. When the bells rang, they produced a standing wave that filled the space and amplified the vibration. So the reason that it works with your body is because the body is roughly 70% water, just like the earth. So sound does the same thing that the ocean does with sound. So when the bell rang, the building resonated and the body resonated. The nervous system regulated and your conscious expanded. Because when your nervous system is regulated, that's when your consciousness comes in fully. When you're expansive, and then you can see, do, feel everything. And this is why chanting is also used, because your body and your brain listen to the sound of your own voice. And when you chant and you make the om sounds and you make the frequency sounds with your vocal cords, it hums into your body. And your body's 70% water. So when you're humming at those frequency ranges, you are lifting up your feelings. You are creating healing within you. Whenever you command yourself to heal and you believe it, you are commanding your cells to reorganize. You are speaking to your waters within you to reorganize and to heal, just like the ocean does when it's creating a shell with its sound. So speaking to yourself is the most powerful sound technology you have that's free. And here's the part that matters. Your brain vibrates to the sound of your own voice, and that's neuroscience. It's not spirituality. When you speak out loud, the sound reaches the brain through the ears and through the bone conduction. Your skull vibrates. The auditory cortex, which is your hearing, activates more strongly than when you hear someone else. That's why in the course that I'm building, I teach you what to say and make you record it. Well, I mean, I can't force you, but the recommendation I do is to have you record things in your own voice and play it back to you so that you can start rewiring your brain and your body. And what happens when you do this is that your nervous system receives the signal from your own voice internally as authoritative because it's you speaking to you. When you hear somebody else, it doesn't work that well. It may work temporarily, it may eventually work, but that is a long way to China. And I know that today, with all the capitalistic society stuff that we have, everybody wants you to listen to their audio stuff. But there is no more powerful way for you to change than to hear the sound of your own voice. It has a direct regulatory effect on your nervous system. You can self-soothe. You can tell yourself to calm down, especially when you verbalize it and say it out loud. It takes the fear from the back of your amygdala in the back of your brain and puts it into the front of your brain, which is your prefrontal cortex. And that is where reasoning happens. So you are immediately, with the sound of your own voice and validating yourself out loud, you're immediately taking yourself out of dysregulation and you're starting to calm yourself down. And this is why humming works. You know, you notice people humming when they're not, doing so well. You'll notice humming, or even when they're happy, they might be humming. Whenever I do rope courses that are really high off the ground, I will hum to myself the entire time. I don't even notice that I'm doing it, but it's a way for me to calm my nervous system so that my limbs will actually function and I'll be able to go from like these really high rope courses. I mean, I'm strapped in, right? You're strapped in, but still, your brain is not making sense of what you're doing. And so I calm myself down with humming. Chanting, the reason why they do it in ancient cultures and Eastern cultures is because it regulates your breath and your heart rate. Speaking slowly lowers your cortisol. When you speak at a slower, regulated pace, the people that are listening to you will start to regulate their own heart rate as they're listening to you. That's why speaking really fast makes everybody a little bit more nervous. If you're nervous, you're going to speak really fast. And that just kind of makes everyone nervous. So you want to slow your speech down. And that vocal tone, when you slow your speech down, influences your vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in your body that activates your rest state. And that's why it's so important. It can regulate you. And when you activate it with sound or with breathing, it sends you into a more calm mode. So when you speak calmly to yourself, your body hears safety, your nervous system downshifts, and your electromagnetic field stabilizes into that frequency. And this is why talking to yourself works. So you're not doing positive thinking, okay? Because if you think positive thoughts, that's great, it helps, but it doesn't help as well as the felt vibration that your voice brings to your body. And that's the fastest way to bring your body, mind, and spirit into coherence. Because thoughts are electrical, your voice is mechanical and electromagnetic. And that's why, you see that these affirmations, like you gotta repeat them over and over and over and over again because you're thinking them. If you said them out loud and you listened to it out loud in the sound of your own voice, it would work so much better. So going back to our frequency and sound and the things that we were able to do, and this is just kind of like a fun part in all this, is that travel worked the same way. So if you look at ancient sites like Stonehenge, there are some sites in Peru where you can see a doorway, and they were placed with precise geometry and spacing and transported from hundreds of miles away. And the sites align with the solstices and the celestial cycles. And the reason for that is because the energy is vibrating with, the universe is vibrating with energy all the time. And so these cycles cause more energy to be directed towards Earth. So that's why they're set up that way. And distance wasn't navigated like mechanically. It was navigated through vibration. So you held a clear vision of where you wanted to go, and you summoned the feeling associated with that space, and you could feel it because the rocks were there from that far. So you knew the vibration and the feeling of that stone and that rock. And when you resonated with it by matching that resonant frequency into your body, having the clear vision and then humming, chanting, or singing, you would be transported. And you think, oh wow, that's really hard to imagine because I'm a physical body. Well, you're not. At the subatomic level, you are constantly shifting in and out of the quantum field. And you're going so fast and you're vibrating so fast that you are held together. But your atoms are 90% space, meaning you are made up of atoms and you are 90% space. So it's not that far of a reach to think I can vibrate myself and move, because you are everything. You're every single particle. That's why they're connected across space-time. So if you are everything everywhere all at once, and you wanted to move your vibrating mass that is yourself across the world, because you could match the resonant frequency of that stone that matches the resonant frequency of the site across the world, all you'd have to do is match your tone, match your body to it, and feel it. And that's what we could do before. And that's how we used to travel. So the destination, if it was farther, you would use higher octaves, layers of the same tone. And they act as frequency anchors, the stones. Touching them transmitted that information of frequency of that site into your body. And if you look, these sites are placed along these energy lines, fault lines, where energy naturally comes up from the earth from the movement of the tectonic plates. So when you're moving something, right, windmill creates energy because it's rotating, and the energy gets sent through your copper wiring or whatever into a battery. Well, movement of the tectonic plates of the earth cause a massive amount of energy. And there's water underneath there, and water takes that energy and moves with it too, and it's efficient. So that's why they were laid along these lines, because that's where the energy came in. So now I want to talk about that torus field that I was talking about, the unifying mechanism. And this is a torus field that surrounds you, that donut that comes from the center of your chest. I said it surrounds your body, and it does, but it comes from your heart space, the center of your chest. And this is one little tidbit for somebody or anybody listening that wants to feel more present. If you want to feel more present in the moment, bring your awareness to your heart space. That's where your electromagnetism flows out from. When you do that, you will be more present. And instead of trying to focus on one object to bring yourself back in the body to be more present, if you focus on your heart space and bring your awareness into your heart space, you'll be able to see everything and be more present that way. And that's just been my experience through experimenting with all of this. So we talked about how your emotions are on a frequency range, and those are measurable. So the lower frequencies, again, are the fear, anger, grief, pride, and the higher frequencies are love, joy, peace, and authenticity. And those are just markers, like there's everything in between. When you are feeling these frequencies, if they're higher, your torus field expands because of the emotion that you're feeling in your body. When they are lower, your torus field from your electromagnetic field shrinks. It collapses. And when you're stuck with the emotions in your body, that's where it stays. So when you have persistent patterns in your life, it's because, and then you can tell that that's your frequency and you've got stuck emotions. Because your survival patterns, the repetition, those are subconscious programming that comes in from your past experiences, and and that's what is stuck. Your past is what's stuck. The emotions you didn't feel in the past, that's what's stuck. And whatever you're magnetizing to you in the repetition of these patterns in your reality is what you need to work on. If you keep meeting a partner who is a certain way, you break up with them and you meet another person and they're the same way, it isn't them, it's you. And there is something about you and the way that you feel about relationships and love that is magnetizing the same partners to you. So that everything is a clue. So if you move that energy out and you work with yourself, you'll stop attracting those partners almost immediately. Whenever you realize what's happening and that's the pain you need to feel and you go through it, you'll stop attracting those partners. So persistent patterns aren't your moral failure. None of this is about morality. It is about unconscious, subconscious programming that exists in your body. So when you figure it out and you know that your reality is mirroring your internal state and those are just stuck emotions, then you start doing the work. You really want to figure it out. You want to know what this is. And the way that you do that is you ask yourself, show me. You build that relationship with yourself. You look at yourself in the mirror and you say, show me why this is all fucked up. Because that's what I did. I was sick and tired of trying to do everything right and saying, why the fuck is all this going wrong all the time? I went to school, I had the babies, I stayed married forever. Why is it happening? I was loyal to my friends, I was loyal to my family, and they all were dipshits most of the time. And it's because my childhood, the wounds that I didn't feel, the things that I didn't process, the things that I didn't understand. And I was the dipshit. And I was the one attracting more dipshits because I felt like a dipshit. So you will continue to do that until you heal. And the bigger picture is that in our state, in our human state, and your eyes are part of your brain, right? We see less than 1% of 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's what you're using with your electromagnetic torus field that surrounds your body to create your reality. So when people say, no, it doesn't work that way, or this or that or the other, I just laid out your science for you. It's less than 1% of 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum, and you emit electromagnetic waves from your torus field that surrounds your body. That's science. Those waves respond to frequency and your field expands. It's measurable. I just put it all together and linked it. So if you create reality with your electromagnetic self, and we see less than 1% of 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum is where everything comes from. And that's what I call the unified field of consciousness, because that's where all possibilities live. So we don't really see reality. We magnetize it and create it. We collapse our wave because we are the observer with our consciousness, our subconscious, and our nervous system. And your torus field, when it contracts or expands, determines what reality you get. And it determines that from your emotions, which are, if they're stuck, keep you in a lower frequency state. So in closing, I know this was a long episode again, but man, I will ask myself, like, what is this week's podcast going to be about? And then stuff comes up. And this is what came up this week. And this is like the first part of my course. It's talking about all these things so that, you know, everyone can kind of realize where they're at and where they're stuck and start working to shift it. So it's not fantasy, it's physics, it's geometry, it's biology, and oh my God, that stuff just makes me so happy. Like, if you ever want to know what to do with your life, just go with what gives you passion and go with mystery and go with all of it. You will be so much happier. So your nervous system is remembering how to listen, and working with it is how you create a new reality with your frequency, vibration, emotion, and your electromagnetism. Your body is your interface, the feeling is the mechanism, and your voice can be the command signal for you to start healing. Your consciousness is the author. You think you are the author, you are not the author. You are experiencing less than 1% of 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum, okay? That's your reality. So you are aware of what consciousness is doing for you and your subconscious. And once you have your awakening and you get your meta-awareness, you are aware of what you're aware of. And then you can start shifting your reality. And not just with your thoughts. You can see where people like zoom in, oh, your thoughts, I think, therefore I am. Well, yeah, but that's super oversimplified. You think, that creates hormone chemistry that goes into your body, that creates emotions, that goes out through your electromagnetic spectrum, or field, your torus field, that goes into the electromagnetic spectrum. And based on your frequency, that's what you observe and collapse your wave into reality. So you're just here hanging on for the ride and trying to do your best. And when you realize that you can connect to your consciousness, because it is you, that's when you start shifting. You start taking control. You start speaking to yourself. You start connecting with yourself. And you start believing that this is something that can actually be done, and take back your authority from what you are seeing and what you are witnessing and what you are being told, because that is programming. So I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking about it. I don't know what's going to be on next week. I used to try to plan it. I do not do that anymore, because what comes up is what needs to come up. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye.